Okay, guys, so what we're working on today was, we've been talking about bacteria. We talked about the difference between prokaryotes and eukaryotes. We focused on cell structure, all the parts of the bacterial cell and how they allow it to function. We've also talked about shapes of bacteria to help scientists identify what they're looking at and what role it plays in the environment, whether it be helpful, whether it be to cause disease. Now, the next step that we need to focus on is how bacteria reproduce. There's one of two ways. The first type of reproduction that we're going to focus on is a process of asexual reproduction, which means they only need one parent. So if we look here, all right, this is our one parent. This is what we're starting with, asexual reproduction. The actual term is called binary fission. Okay, it's a process that cells undergo when they divide. So before we get into it, let's take a look at our bacterial cell right here. Let's identify a couple of structures that we should be familiar with. All right, if you're looking here, surrounding the cell, this pink box, what structure is that? It's a cell wall. Right within the cell wall is our plasma membrane, or cell membrane, and then we have our DNA, or our prokaryotic chromosome. So what's happening here is the cell is starting to get ready to divide. It's preparing. By doing that, the first thing it has to do is it has to increase its size. It has to enlarge. And the reason it's doing that is because it's going to duplicate or copy its internal chromosomes. All right? And you can see, if you go back to our first visual, we started with our strand of DNA. Now we have two. So a copy has been made. Okay. So after the copy's been made, what happens with these chromosomes is that they want to attach themselves to the cell wall. Specifically because you can see down here as we move into our third visual that the cell is starting to pinch off. Okay, it's preparing to split, and when it does that, the chromosomes or a copy of the DNA are each going to shift to opposite ends of the cell, along with the cytoplasm. Okay, so that when it does completely split, each new cell will have a copy of DNA, cytoplasm, ribosomes, which we've mentioned. You don't see them here in this picture, but the ribosomes as well will shift to opposite ends of the cell. Once that happens, the cell will split. All right. So if we move down here and look at our last visual, all right, we now have two new organisms. All right, two new bacteria. We originally started with one cell up here. After they go through a process of binary fission, we end with two. Some things to keep in mind that we talked about were they reproduce exponentially. Okay, and what that means is every time they're going to produce two. So this guy up here, when he reproduced after his cycle, he has two. So when this guy right here reproduces, he'll have two. This guy will have two, and it continues. That process continues. A few other things that we talked about was if conditions are favorable, bacteria, it could take minutes, it could take hours for them to go through their cycle. Compared to humans, which we talked about, probably on average it takes 20 years before a new generation is created. So you can see the drastic difference. Why there's trillions and trillions of bacteria that we find in our world. Okay, so it's very important. Also, we have to keep in mind that when conditions are less favorable, it doesn't happen as fast. This process of binary fission doesn't happen as fast. It could be maybe they reproduce once every hour. So what I want you to think about, now that the video is over, try to do a little simple, a couple calculations, but figure out how many bacteria would be if they reproduced every 20 minutes in a 4-hour time period. You have 4 hours. How many bacteria would there be at the end of 4 hours if they reproduced every 20 minutes? Okay, come prepared to class with that.